Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome indeed, and thank you for participating in this policy development roundtable to help to shape the new Colombo Plan. The participation of so many people far beyond our expectations is a sign of great interest in and I think enthusiasm for this initiative. And as Executive Director of the Menzies Research Centre, I am most grateful to you for your input. Not least, may I say how grateful we are to diplomatic representatives of so many of Australia's regional neighbours with whom we seek to partner in the new Colombo Plan. Thank you for being with us for this opening session. After Julie Bishop, Tony Abbott and Brett Mason have set the scene in this session, we'll break briefly for morning tea, and then, having lulled you into a false sense of security, we are going to put you to work and to ask you to participate in your table group discussion in thinking about the questions on the sheets in front of you. And then we'll come back together again for plenary discussion. Your ideas today and later will be very much appreciated. But first, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome you more fully on behalf of the Menzies Research Centre, it's my pleasure to call on the Chair of the Centre, Tom Harley.
Thank you, Don. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Menzies Research Centre New Colombo Plan Forum. I particularly welcome Their Excellencies, the Ambassadors and High Commissioners of at least 16 missions here in Canberra and 6 other representatives of other missions to Canberra. Julie Bishop will do this more formally in a moment. I'd like to welcome Tony Abbott, the Leader of the Opposition, Julie Bishop, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition and Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade, Senator Brett Mason, Shadow Minister for Universities and Research, Teresa Gambaro MP, Shadow Parliamentary Secretary for International Development Assistance, Saxon Rice, Queensland Assistant Minister for Technical and Further Education, Kelly O'Dwyer, Chair of the Coalition's Defence, Foreign Affairs and Trade Policy Committee, Alan Tudge MP, Chair of the Coalition's Online Higher Education Working Group, and the group's Deputy Chairman, Karen Andrews MP. Also Senator Ian MacDonald from Queensland, Shadow Parliamentary Secretary for Northern Australia. My fellow directors of the Menzies Research Centre, Drew Abercrombie, Paul Espy, Tony McClellan and May Kaur. And particularly I'd like to thank Professor Don Markwell, our Executive Director, and his assistant Rachel Thompson, the Deputy Director, for an outstanding job in pulling together today. And I'd also like to welcome the members of the Menzies Research Centre Academic Advisory Council, Ross Babbage, Amanda Bell, Jeff Bennett, Henry Ergas, Greg Melhuish, Jeremy Shermore. And I'd like to particularly acknowledge our sponsors who have made today possible. The Macquarie Group, represented here by Trevor Burns, and Capitol Hill Premier State, represented here by their chairman, Michael Photius. Our centre relies on the support of sponsors and donors to ensure we continue our work, so thank you. Thank you, all of you, for coming here today. We are almost overwhelmed by the level of interest, and we really look forward to hearing your ideas. It'll help shape the new Colombo Plan, a policy with potentially profound implications for generations to come. This centre is the Liberal Party's think tank. We work to identify high-priority public policy ideas which are practical and have real impact. We do this by bringing together the best independent thinkers, experts and practitioners from way outside the political process, but we bring them together with the political leadership charged with the responsibility for developing, articulating and hopefully implementing policy. In all of the theatre that surrounds politics, elections, leadership questions and the latest polling results, Australians could be forgiven for asking if good policy and the way it is implemented really matters. It does, and the process by which it is made and implemented makes a real difference. As the former head of the Productivity Commission, Gary Banks, said in a recent speech on productivity, good process in policy formation is the most important thing of all. If we're serious about securing Australia's future and our prosperity depends on it. Good process involves consultation whenever it's appropriate. Good policy and good policy implementation is why the Centre was charged by Julie Bishop to invite you all here today to contribute your ideas and energy to the development of what we hope will be a signature initiative of the next coalition government. Today we have leaders from higher education, from business, from international aid and student and other non-government organisations, from the media and from a large cross-section of organisations. Most have no political affiliations, but all share a passion for public policy. We have Vice-Chancellors or Deputy Vice-Chancellors and other leaders from most of Australia's 39 universities. We have presidents, chairmen and CEOs of some of Australia's leading businesses and their associations. I particularly welcome Tony Shepherd, the President of the Business Council of Australia, Innes Willocks, the head of the Australian Industry Group. We have CEOs of some of Australia's leading international aid organisations and policy development bodies. You've come from across the road, from interstate and from overseas. Many great policy ideas have stumbled because their implementation has not been thought through. Today is about work, not words, and I believe a determination to make this policy idea a success for our country. Thank you.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in welcoming to speak somebody whose experience as Minister for Education and now her experience as Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade has made her a great champion of this idea, Julie Bishop.
Thank you, Don. Ladies and gentlemen, I add my welcome to you all to this Policy Development Roundtable in our national capital. I am personally delighted that so many people have seen fit to take time out of their busy lives to be here to help develop what we hope will be a signature policy of an incoming coalition government. And I particularly want to acknowledge the ambassadors and high commissioners from China, from India, Indonesia, New Zealand, Singapore, Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste, Sri Lanka, the Philippines, Bangladesh and Pakistan, the deputies from Japan, South Korea and Malaysia, and representative from Hong Kong. You are all most welcome here. I also want to acknowledge the presence of representatives from our universities, from our student bodies, from our NGOs, from organisations across the country who feel passionate about deeper engagement with our region. And I want to make a personal thanks to James Packer and to Tony Shepherd for taking time to be here today. It's deeply appreciated. Australia is a global nation with global interests in what must be the global century. Yet we are a nation bounded by the Indian Ocean on the west, the Pacific on the east, and we are unmistakably located in Asia. And Australia's strength as a nation and our reputation in the world is at its highest when our influence in our region is at its strongest. And that is why a coalition government will focus our foreign policy assets, not exclusively, but as a priority, on our region, whether it be our military and defence capability, our economic and trade capacity, our diplomatic and foreign aid efforts. Our region is where we live. It's where we can have the most influence. It's where we can be a positive force for good. Or let me put it another way, and I'll read you a quote Geographically, Australia is next door to Asia, and our destiny as a nation is irrevocably conditioned by what takes place in Asia. This means that our future depends to an ever-increasing degree upon the political stability of our Asian neighbours, upon the economic well-being of Asian people, and upon the development of understanding and friendly relations between Australia and Asia. Whilst it remains true that peace is indivisible and that what takes place in any part of the world may affect us, our vital interests are closer to home. It is therefore in Asia and the Pacific that Australia should make its primary effort in the field of foreign relations. Those words were spoken on the 9th of January 1950 by Percy Spender, the Foreign Minister or Minister for External Affairs in the Menzies government, on the eve of his departure to a meeting of Commonwealth nations in Colombo. Since that time, the Liberal Party has continued with this open, outward-looking, optimistic worldview. We have based our economic model on being an open, export-oriented country. The Menzies foreign policy found its expression in an education initiative, a student program, the Colombo Plan, which brought to our shores the best and brightest students from our region. Australia reached out to the world and in this way engaged on a people-to-people basis with our region. Over 30 years, some 40,000 students came to Australia, lived in our homes, studied at our universities, engaged with our people, came to know us and forged deep and lasting friendships. That is why the Coalition believes that if we are truly serious about broadening and deepening our engagement in Asia, we need a grand initiative, a signature policy, hopefully that will go on in perpetuity. And that's why an incoming coalition government will seek to establish a new Colombo Plan, a government-backed scheme that provides our students, our best and brightest, with the opportunity to undertake study at a university in our region. The hallmark of this proposal, the part that sets it ahead of anything else, is that we want to partner with business so that students who are part of this scheme will also have the opportunity, while they're studying at a university in the region, to undertake an internship or a mentorship with a business working in that country, the host country. Let me explain our thinking behind this business-government higher education partnership. When I was the Education Minister, I hosted an international education conference in 2006. The idea was to showcase Australia as a destination for students in the region to come to our universities. And we had education ministers from as far as Turkey in the west through to the Marshall Islands in the east. But through the course of the day, it became apparent to me that there was an underlying issue, and that was the number of students from Australia who were studying in countries in our region. And Education Minister after Education Minister mentioned the fact that whilst they had tens of thousands or hundreds of students studying in Australia, there were virtually none studying in their universities. I saw this as a public diplomacy issue that Australia should address. And so I got the Department of Education to carry out a survey of university students across the country. The results, unfortunately, came at the same time as the 2007 election, so there wasn't much I could do with them, except to say I read the survey. And the results showed that students didn't make the connection between studying overseas and getting a job at the end of their undergraduate years, that they couldn't see the point in spending time at a university in our region while they were getting a degree at an Australian university. The Coalition wants it to become the norm rather than the exception for Australian students to undertake part of their undergraduate studies at a university in our region. We want it to be seen as a rite of passage for young Australians so that we can build up a large body of people who have experienced living, working, studying in another country in our region, learning the language, forging friendships, exchanging ideas, and then coming back to Australia with skills and perceptions and ideas that will boost our innovation and our productivity. So that's how we came up with the idea of the new Colombo Plan. And today we seek your ideas, your advice and your direction so that we can make this plan a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to assure you that an incoming coalition government has the energy, the political will and the leadership to make this happen. And to prove that, I now have great pleasure in inviting my leader, the Leader of the Opposition, Tony Abbott, to say a few words.
Thanks very much, Julie, and thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's terrific to be here this morning, and it's great to see so many people so focused on building better relationships within our region, and particularly between Australia and the important countries of our region. You'll hear from Brett Mason, the Shadow Minister for Higher Education, shortly. Teresa Gambaro, the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs, is here to support Julie and myself. I am really thrilled, Julie, to see how many people you have assembled to support this idea, which is your idea and which the Coalition has enthusiastically embraced. It is a remarkable roll call of the diplomatic corps of this capital, led by the ambassadors and high commissioners of China, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, the Philippines, PNG, Singapore and New Zealand, and senior representatives from the other missions here. A really impressive roll call. It's terrific to see so many senior business leaders here. Obviously, Tony Shepherd, the head of the Business Council, James Packer, one of our most famous business people, David Peaver of Rio, Andrew Forrest, I believe, is here or on his way. He's just arrived. Very good, very good. And of course, so many senior representatives of the higher education sector. You are here because this is an idea whose time has come, or perhaps I should say, come again. But it will be a different and better Colombo Plan in the future to that which we've had in the past, because that which we had in the past was a one-way street. It was the young leaders of our region coming to Australia to benefit from our wisdom. This Colombo Plan will be a two-way street. It will be the young leaders of Australia going to our region to learn from your wisdom, because we must advance together. We must learn from each other if this part of the world is to be the beacon of prosperity and, over time, freedom and liberalism that we would like it to be. It is a remarkable story, the story of the Colombo Plan. As Julie's mentioned, some 40,000 future leaders came to this country in the years leading up to the mid-80s. And many of the changes that we've seen in our region over the decades have been influenced by those who, returning from this country, helped to lead theirs. Asia today is much more prosperous, much more liberal, much more humane, much more market-oriented than it has ever been before. And I believe that those Colombo Plan alumni have been a very important part of that improvement. And this country was changed very significantly for the better because of the presence here for an extended period of time of so many of the finest young people from around our region. we are a far more cosmopolitan society than we were in the 1950s. We have a far more liberal and humane immigration policy than we did in the 1950s, notwithstanding recent efforts to crack down on something which should be at the very heart of our immigration program. So we have been changed, our region has been changed, and we want to renew that change for the better with this new Colombo Plan. We have a regrettable tendency to underestimate just how progressive the Australia of the 1960s and 70s was. It was, after all, Bob Menzies who first described Asia not as the Far East, but the Near North. Back in the 1960s, some 40% of Australian school leavers were studying a foreign language. I regret to say that the figure is more like 10%, and many of the great languages of Asia, such as Bahasa, have almost disappeared from our schools. For all our talk of the Asian century, and for all our current talk of Asian engagement, there has been much to blight our relationship with Asia just in the last few years. If we were as serious about Asia as we must be, we would never have banned the uranium sales to India. We would never have banned the live cattle exports to Indonesia. We would not engage in megaphone diplomacy as we do so often over things like border protection. So there's much that can be improved. But rather than dwell on the strengths and weaknesses of particular governments, what must endure and what must strengthen is the relationship between the peoples of Australia and the peoples of our region. It is to the credit of Indonesia that 17,000 young Indonesians are currently studying in this country. It is to the discredit of Australia that only some 200 Australians are currently studying in Indonesia. I had the interesting experience just a couple of months ago of being in a room with the former Prime Minister, Mr Howard, my own Chief of Staff, the Foreign Minister of Indonesia, Mardi Natalegawa, and his three most senior foreign policy officials. Of the 7 people in the room, 6 had been to university in Australia. Lucky Australia. Lucky Australia to have such a soft power advantage in the councils of our region. But this will not be the case in the future if we do not lift our game. And it is, as I said, to the benefit of our region as well as to the benefit of this country that a much larger student exchange program get underway as quickly as possible. It must be a large program if it is to make a difference. But it must also have an elite component if it is to engage the leadership of this country and the countries of our region. I was lucky enough to study in Oxford, and it may be too much to hope that the new Colombo Plan could be the Rhodes Scholarships of our region, but perhaps it could emulate the Churchill Fellowships or the Fulbright Fellowships of our region. Perhaps in honour of the founder of the original Colombo Plan, we could have Spender Fellows who are in our region and in this country as a result of the new Colombo Plan. And as Julie said, there should be a strong business component because the future of our region depends upon strong businesses. We cannot have strong societies without strong economies, and we cannot have strong economies without strong private businesses. And companies need to have international linkages just as countries should have international linkages. So I think this is going to be a very important day, certainly in the development of coalition policy and the development of what I hope will be a signature initiative of any incoming coalition government, but quite possibly an important day in the life of our country. quite possibly in 30 and 40 years' time, people will look back to this meeting in this Parliament House and say, yes, those people made a difference. Yes, countries were changed as a result of this meeting. So much that happens in this building is fierce and partisan. So much that happens in this building is all about the large egos of the people who strut and fret their hour upon the stage. But hopefully what we do today is about the better angels of our nature. It is about things that will make a lasting difference to our country and our world. I want to thank Julie Bishop and all of my parliamentary colleagues who are here today, Alan Tudge, Kelly O'Dwyer, Ian MacDonald, as well as those I've mentioned earlier. This is a very important process, and we hope that at the end of today there will be a steering group that will refine and finalise the proposal that we will take to the people at the next election. We will be a prudent, a frugal and a responsible government should we get the chance after the next election. We will be a consultative and collegial government should we get the chance after the next election. And you don't start being consultative and collegial on the day after the election. You will only be consultative and collegial after the election if that's what you've been before the election. Good policy has to be talked about and discussed and consulted over. It can't just be dictated by the great gods in Canberra. We want to be partners with you, not simply dictators to you. That's why we are going through this process. I want to thank you again for being here. As I said, I think this can be a very significant day in the life of our nation, but as Tom and Don and Julie have said, this is a working day. We're not just going to talk at you, we are going to talk with you, and together we will build a better country, a better region, a better world with a brighter future.
Tony, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your desire to get the input of university, business, NGO and other people from around the country and the region. Brett Mason, as Shadow Minister for Universities and Research, has been consulting with universities on a range of higher education issues, and it's my pleasure now to introduce him.
Don, thank you, and to Tony, to Julie, my parliamentary colleagues, Excellencies, Vice-Chancellors, ladies and gentlemen. Can I thank you all so very much for being here this morning. It's great that once again education, particularly higher education, is being looked at as part of the diplomatic mix in the Asia-Pacific. So Julie, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in his address to the Universities Australia Conference just last month, Tony Abbott emphasised that in the context of higher education, the coalition would be a stable and consultative government. That's why Tony, Julie and I are here today to talk to you about the coalition's new Colombo Plan initiative. We want to hear your views and we want you to help us shape our policy. That's good for you, and it will also be very good for us. Let me just make a few very quick remarks about what we think the impact of the new Colombo Plan will be and the opportunities that it will provide for our universities and for our students. Sir Robert Menzies' original Colombo Plan back in the 1950s pioneered the so-called first wave of international education in Australia. As noted by Tony and Julie, it led to greater cultural diversity and closer diplomatic ties with our Asian neighbours as thousands of students came to this country with scholarships under our aid program to attend our universities. And many current business and government leaders in the region are alumni of Australian universities, and fortunately, most, I think, have very fond memories of their time studying here and living here in our country. The second wave of international education in the mid-1990s, under John Howard, involved the promotion of higher education as a major export for Australia, as our country was marketed as a study destination overseas. This saw the number of overseas students attending our universities increase from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands within a decade or so. While important, the second wave approach is no longer enough. The push now is for education to be more than just a commodity. The aim is to build a broader, more meaningful and long-term conception of diplomacy and international relations, as well as international education. Thus, international education has now moved on to its third wave, and the new Colombo Plan is a central plank in that. As noted by James Packer in his address to the Asia Society last week, the opportunity for Australia is so much more than dollars. Mr. Packer praised the development of the new Colombo Plan because of its ability to build key relationships for the future through people exchanges in China and Asia more generally. So what will the new Colombo Plan mean for universities, and what will it mean for students? While the original Colombo Plan's focus was exclusively on bringing students to Australia, the new Colombo Plan, as noted by Tony and by Julie, will also take our best and brightest talent overseas, giving them access to study and internship opportunities with our Asia-Pacific neighbours. The new Colombo Plan will allow students to develop strong alumni networks and can take constructive experiences and contacts into senior research, industry, commerce and government positions. The new Colombo Plan will produce university graduates who are career ready and will have the diversity of experience and the cultural understanding needed to succeed in the Asian century. And the new Colombo Plan will allow universities, many of whom are represented so well here today, to strengthen and expand existing collaborative research and teaching partnerships that have already worked hard to develop with other universities within the Asia-Pacific, and will also build better business and industry linkages right across a range of sectors. These are the very outcomes that Julie Bishop has been advocating, not just during her time as the Shadow Foreign Minister, but also when she was the Minister for Education in the Howard government. The outward focus of the new Colombo Plan is very significant. In the Cheney International Education Report released just last month, it was noted, and I quote, "Australia's international education sector is still perceived by many as a one-way student recruitment model. A focus on two-way relationships built on strategic partnerships would enhance Australia's international reputation, particularly in Asia." And finally, what platform will the new Colombo Plan provide to meet the challenges of the future? The new Colombo Plan will hopefully contribute to a more integrated higher education system in our region, serving as a platform for mutual recognition, accreditation and quality assurance, and ultimately, one might hope, doing for the Asia-Pacific what the Bologna process has done for higher education in Europe. But that's a fair way away. In this way, the new Colombo Plan will help to deliver on the commitment of APEC nations in the Vladivostok Declaration in 2012 to promote the greater mobility of students as a means of building greater engagement and closer ties within our region. APEC itself appreciates the importance of higher education, not only as an instrument of trade and as an instrument of commerce, but also of integration and more broadly relationship building. Our universities, to their great credit, have for a number of years been leading the way in connecting Australia with the Asia Pacific through expansive international partnerships. But recent global economic challenges have placed considerable pressure on university systems right around the world. This great disruption has caused extensive innovation and efficiency in teaching and research in many foreign university sectors. While our universities haven't suffered quite so much, the lesson is that Australia cannot afford to be complacent. Staying on top of Asia's changing demography, the significant increase in global demand for higher education, the growth of the middle class and the extraordinary technological development that will rapidly expand educational opportunity and access means that this is a really exciting time for higher education throughout the world, and particularly here, right here in the Asia Pacific region, the new centre of economic power in the world. The Coalition understands this. Our commitment to universities and to research since World War II has been immense, not only measured by government support, but by an appreciation for what universities do for our students, our country, our region and our world. That's why the Coalition's new Colombo Plan is so significant to the future of international education in our region, within the Asia Pacific, and that's why Tony, Julie and I are here today to listen to what you have to tell us. Thank you.
Brett, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for, amongst other things, illustrating how the new Colombo Plan is very much going to require and will show a whole-of-government approach. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal proceedings. We now have morning tea and then we set you to work. Some of our guests, diplomats and others, will be leaving us after morning tea, and I'd like to express gratitude to them for their participation. After morning tea at 10:35, everyone who's participating in the further sessions is asked to return to your table or find a table and to start work as a group on the questions on the sheets. Please choose one of your number as to be the scribe. Yes, as with the Australian cricket team, failure to deliver. Thank you, James. Failure to deliver may have consequences. Each group is asked to choose a scribe and a spokesperson. The scribe is asked to record key points from your group in writing to leave with us, and the spokesperson is asked to present the top 3 points that your group wants to make, the top 3 ideas from your group in the plenary session that will follow on after the small group sessions. Federal MPs and senators will move from group to group, and that'll be an opportunity to engage with them, as well as your group putting in a record of your key points taken down by your scribe. Every individual is warmly welcome to put in your own response to these questions and your ideas on any aspect of the new Colombo Plan, whether it's covered by these questions or not. Please either give back your sheet today if you want to make an individual contribution, or email the sheet or other ideas to the imaginatively titled email address newcolomboplan@menziesrc.org. As Tony has said, there will be a steering group to carry forward the policy planning from today. We warmly invite nominations or expressions of interest for the steering group, which ideally should be in writing, and again either given to me today or by emailing us at newcolomboplan@menziesrc.org. Send them to us, please, at the Menzies Research Centre, because we will continue to act in close collaboration with Julie Bishop and with Brett Mason and their colleagues as the Secretariat for the policy development of the new Colombo Plan. One housekeeping matter before rewarding you with some morning tea. This is a private area of Parliament House, and as a result of that, we need to have a number of people here who can assist in escorting guests back to the main foyer. So if you need to leave the building, please make yourself known too, and I'll ask these people to make themselves known. Please, Gabby's down the back. Kirsten's outside. Sam is down the back. John is over here, or Rachel, who's down here, or myself, and we will gladly help you to leave the building. Thank you again for... Last one out, turn off the lights. Thank you again for your participation today. As Julie and Tony and Brett have said, we very much value your participation and your input. Please help yourself to some morning tea, and please then return to your table at 10:35 to get to work on the group discussion. Thank you very much indeed.